Assalamu alaikum and good morning to all my students of class 9. My name is Miss Noreen and I will teach you biology online. As you know that we will start chapter number 4 in previous lecture, and I also explained topic number 1, that is microscope and its type. Now we turn page number 56, in which chapter number 4 is mentioned. I will start second topic of this chapter, that is history of the development of cell theory. This history starts from 1665. In this century, an English scientist named Robert Hooke, he discovered a honeycomb-like structure in a slice of a plant organs under a compound microscope. Robert Hooke also discovered a honeycomb-like structure in a plant tissues under a compound microscope. When he observed this structure under a compound microscope, he saw a cell wall around on this structure, and he named this structure called cell. This honeycomb-like structure, he named this structure is called cell. And this structure, cell, is compared to compartment, like a rooms. This cell is like a room or compartment when he saw under a microscope. In this way, Robert Hooke first time discovered cell in plant tissues under a compound microscope. Next year, 1670, another scientist named Anton van Leeuwenhoek. It is also biologist. He observed first living organism under a microscope. This living organism he collect from the pond water and he placed under a microscope. When he studied this organism, he saw it is a unicellular organism. It means its body is made up of only one cell. In this way, Anton van Leeuwenhoek first living organism was observed under a microscope. Next year, 1683, another scientist, Anton van Leeuwenhoek, he published a letter to the Royal Society, and in this letter he drew a diagram of the first protozoa which has been seen under a microscope. ये जो फर्स्ट लिविंग ऑर्गेनिज्म था जो एंटन लीवेनहुक ने माइक्रोस्कोप के अंदर ऑब्जर्व किया, इसकी डायग्राम जो है वो अपने लेटर के अंदर पब्लिश की थी, इन्होंने ड्रॉ की थी, और ये लेटर किसको लिखा था? रॉयल सोसाइटी को लिखा था. In this way, he was discovered first protozoa and bacteria under a microscope. Next, 1833, another scientist named Robert Brown. Robert Brown, he also discovered nucleus in plant cell. Robert Brown was a botanist and he also discovered nucleus in plant cell. What is nucleus? Nucleus is a spherical shaped body which is present in the center of the cell and sometime on the side of cell wall. This spherical shaped body is called nucleus. This nucleus first time was observed by Robert Brown in plant cell. Next year, 1839, the next scientist the name he named was Theodor Schwann. It was a German botanist. He studied not only plant but animal tissues. When he studied plant or animal tissues, he observed that this tissues is composed of one or more cells. This debate is continued, and he published a theory on the cell, and this theory's name was cell theory. There are some postulates of this theory which is present by Theodor Schwann. The first postulate of the cell theory is cells are organisms and all organisms are composed of one or more cells. As you know, students, organisms are of two types. Number one, unicellular, and number two, multicellular. In this point, he explained those organisms whose body is made up of one cell is called unicellular organism, and those organisms whose body is made up of more than one cell is called multicellular organism. So first postulate of cell theory, he also explained all organisms made up of one or more than one cells. This concept he also described in first postulates of cell theory. Second postulate of cell theory is the cell is the basic structure unit for all living organisms. As you know, students, all living organisms which exist on the earth, either plants, animals, human beings, and so many microscopic organisms, the basic structure of all living organisms is made up of cell. The basic unit of all living organism is cell. Okay. Next, 1840, another scientist named Albrecht von Eulicher. He discovered sperms and eggs in cells. What are sperms and eggs? Sperm and eggs are reproductive cells which are found in the body of male and female. Sperms are found in male reproductive system and eggs are found in female reproductive system. And by the fusion of these sperm and eggs, a zygote is developed, and this zygote is further developed to form the whole individual or whole organism. So students, in 1840, Albrecht von Eulicher discovered sperm and eggs in cells. Next, 1845. In 1845, the next scientist he named Carl Heinrich Braun. He reworked on the cell theory and he calling cell is the basic unit of life. So students, we already discussed about it. All living organisms which exist on the earth, their body structure is made up of cell. So cell is the basic unit of all living organisms. Cell is the basic unit of all life. For example, plants, animals and human beings, their body is made up of cells. Next, in 1855, another scientist named Rudolf Virchow. He was a physiologist, physician and pathologist. What is the object of Rudolf Virchow? He translates third point of cell theory. He also described third point of cell theory, that is, all cells develops only from pre-existing cells. First of all, we discuss here What do you mean by pre-existing cells? Pre-existing cells means older cells. In our body, older cells are found, and these older cells are called pre-existing cells. These older cells divide and form new cells. That's why organisms grow. So, the concept that all cells develop from pre-existing cells. New cells are formed by the division of older cells. And these older cells are called pre-existing cells. जो new cells हमारी body में form होते हैं वो कैसे बनते हैं? These cells are developed by the division of pre-existing cells or older cells. Now, next, in 1862, another scientist named Louis Pasteur, he was a French biologist and microbiologist. He performed an experiment to prove the idea which is given by Rudolf Virchow. Rudolf Virchow explained that all cells develop only from pre-existing cells. This idea is proved by experiment by Louis Pasteur. Okay, students, in this way, second topic of chapter number 4, cell and tissues, is completed. And we start third topic of this chapter, that is called cell theory. It is most important topic. Now, there are two scientists. The first name is Sheridan. Who is Sheridan? Sheridan was a botanist. And second scientist named Schwann. Who was Schwann? Schwann was a German zoologist. First of all, we discuss here what are botanists and zoologists. Botanists are those persons who studied plants. Those persons who studied plants are called botanists. And what are zoologists? Those persons who study animals are called zoologists. I hope, students, you understand that Sheridan was a botanist because he studied plant, and Schwann was a German zoologist and he studied animals. By the combining effort of these two scientists, he proposed a theory in 1839, which is called cell theory. In 1855, another scientist named Rudolf Virchow, he was a physician. He also described third point of cell theory, that is, all living organisms arise from pre-existing cells. He also contributed with these two scientists and given postulates of cell theory. Now, we discuss postulates of cell theory. First postulate of cell theory is all living organisms are made up of one or more cells. We already discussed in previous lecture, organisms are two types, unicellular or multicellular. Unicellular organisms are those whose body are made up of one cell, and multicellular organisms are those whose body are made up of more than one cells. This concept is also explained in first postulates of cell theory, that is, all living organisms are made up of one or more cells. अल्लाह ताला ने इस दुनिया में जितने भी लिविंग ऑर्गेनिज्म एग्जिस्ट किए उनकी बॉडी या तो वन सेल से मिलकर बनी है या उनकी बॉडी में एक से ज़्यादा सेल मौजूद होते हैं. Next, second postulates of cell theory is cell is the fundamental unit of structure and function in all living organisms. We also explain second postulate of cell theory. It means that all living organisms, either plants, animals, human beings, their basic structure is made up of cell. Their basic structure is made up of cell. Some organism made up of one cell and some organism made up of more than one cell. सो बेसिक जो स्ट्रक्चर है किसी भी लिविंग ऑर्गेनिज्म का वो किससे मिलके बना है? सेल से मिलके बना है. बॉडी में क्या मौजूद है? सेल मौजूद है. एंड दिस सेल परफॉर्म डिफरेंट फंक्शन इन द बॉडी ऑफ लिविंग ऑर्गेनिज्म. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, माइटोकॉन्ड्रिया, it is a part of cell and he performs the function of respiration. And another part of cell is called cell wall. It also protects the cell from environmental hazards. Okay. Now we also explain third point, that is explained by Rudolf Virchow. The new cell is derived from pre-existing cells dividing into two by cell division. It means that new cells is formed by the division of older cells, and these older cells are called pre-existing cells. These older cells divide and form two new cells by a process which is called cell division. This process is known as cell division, in which cell divide and form new cells. This process is called cell division. What do you mean by pre-existing cell? Older cells are called pre-existing cells, and these older cells divide and form new cells in the body of living organism. By the help of these new cells, the organism can grow. Next postulates of cell theory, it is the last postulate of cell theory. It is cell contain the hereditary material which is passed from generation to generation. First of all, we discuss here what do you mean by hereditary material. Hereditary material means DNA. In the body of every organism, DNA is present. This DNA is the part of chromosome. Chromosome is made up of two substances, that is protein and DNA. All the information of the body of living organism is present in the form of DNA in the body. And this DNA is passed from generation to generation. One generation to another generation. That's why the characteristic transfer from parents to offspring by the help of this DNA. Okay, students, I hope you understand cell theory. There are basic 4 postulates of cell theory. We also explain this postulate in third lecture of cell and tissues, chapter number 4. Cell theory is completed. Now we start another topic of this chapter, that is prokaryotes and eukaryotes. First of all, we discuss here what do you mean by prokaryotes. There are different types of cells present in the body of organisms. First type is called prokaryotes and second type is called eukaryotes. First of all, we discuss here eukaryotes. Organisms whose cells have a membrane bound nucleus are called eukaryotes.